Damon Hill was the last to triumph 12 years ago. Now 50 years to the day after Mike Hawthorn became the first British world champion, Lewis Hamilton has he feels like the possibility of rain for this absolutely vital Chinese Grand Prix. Just as a year ago, it's the penultimate round of the Formula One World Championship, and just as a year ago, it's a race that gives Lewis Hamilton the chance to clinch the Formula One driver's title. A year ago, his lead was 17 points. It looked odds on, but still the title slipped away. This year, his lead is just 5 points. It looks a lot tougher, but he could still clinch it today. Because if Lewis can win this race from pole position, and Felipe Massa finishes no better than 5th, then we're celebrating. If Lewis gets 2nd or 3rd, it's still possible. Depending where Massa finishes, Kubica can also still win the title, but he starts 11th after qualifying problems yesterday. If Lewis can win it here today, it avoids the agony of a showdown at Massa's home circuit in Brazil. He's on pole, Mark, but the Ferraris have really got him surrounded. It's going to be so tough for Lewis Hamilton this afternoon.
It's going to be a very difficult day for Lewis in the office. I mean, he's got Ferraris around him. He's got Alonso and a Renault not far behind as well. His teammates a little bit further down than what he wanted, so not easy.
Yeah, his nearest potential ally, Heikki Kovalainen, way back in 5th, is not going to be of great assistance. What about this weather? What are you feeling about the possibility of rain?
Well, talking to a lot of people in the paddock in the last 10-15 minutes, everybody keeps saying now that there's a possibility of showers coming in, maybe towards the end of the race, but that possibility is very real.
And that could definitely help Lewis.
I think it would help Lewis in the main, because I think in the wet conditions, the McLaren and Lewis Hamilton are very strong, but before that turns up, he's got a lot of work to do.
Well, no apologies at all for Lewis Hamilton, absolutely dominating our race build-up today. He's a British driver on the brink of becoming the first British world champion in some 12 years. He's on pole position, and apart from that, he's got us all very nervous after a far from perfect performance in Japan last weekend.
Hamilton on the right, Raikkonen on the left. Here comes Kovalainen on the attack, and immediately Raikkonen takes the lead. Kovalainen does a great job defending for Hamilton, who locks his brakes. He's pretty rude with Raikkonen there. The two Ferraris almost make contact with each other. What an extraordinary start to the Grand Prix. There goes one of the Red Bulls, a big impact.
And Massa will come back at the inside and he spins Hamilton off. And Hamilton is going to wait for the whole field to go through. He'll be at the back.
Robert Kubica leads from Fernando Alonso. Incident involving cars 1, 2 and 22 under investigation. The incident at the start between Hamilton and Raikkonen, and also the incident between Massa and Hamilton, which led to Hamilton spinning.
Hamilton has got a drive-through penalty for forcing a car, and Kovalainen slowing down. What a disastrous few seconds for McLaren. One's got a drive-through from the back of the field, and the other has broken down.
And we've got a drive-through penalty for Felipe Massa for causing that collision with Hamilton as the race leader, Robert Kubica, comes in. That hands the lead to Alonso.
Here's Hamilton coming through for his drive-through.
The critical point is that Alonso leapfrogged Kubica in the pit stop.
Both incidents thoroughly worthy of being investigated, and I absolutely agree with the decision they've made for Felipe Massa.
Our main competitor for the win. Kubica is the main competitor. Understood, and full traction. Copy. We need half a second more to finish. I'm trying.
Oh no! Look at that! Bourdais coming out of the pit lane. Massa thinks it's mine, the line is mine, and they just run into each other. Kubica has the inside line for it. Raikkonen has to go around the outside, and Kubica makes him fly off the racetrack. Fair, I think, definitely fair. And so he's back into the points. Felipe Massa. It's back-to-back wins, Singapore and Japan, for Fernando Alonso and Renault. He thoroughly deserves it once again. The drive of a great, great champion.
Yes, Fernando Alonso, very much the form man. We'll be hearing a great deal from Lewis during the course of the next half hour. But in your opinion, what should he and the team have learned from that experience in Japan?
I think they have to come away from that thinking about what went on into turn one, and I think that's going to happen today. There's going to be a lot of thinking before he gets there. Is he going to try and make a dive down the inside again? And if there's someone alongside, which could be Kimi Raikkonen with a fast starting Ferrari, or is Lewis just going to back off and just eliminate some of the risk? you know, over the last few days, I'm sure he's been breaking open some fortune cookies out here, trying to understand what the best thing is to do. But he's got to just take things step by step.
And Lewis also knows that he has to keep it legal, whatever that means these days. The stewards are having a bigger and bigger influence on things. Have you made any more sense of that decision that penalised Bourdais and gave an extra point to Massa?
No, not at all. I don't make any sense out of it whatsoever. From my point of view as a former driver, let's be very clear on this, Steve, yeah? You cannot see anything in terms of peripheral vision. He had no way of understanding Massa was going to be on his left-hand side. He comes out the pit lane, he's deemed to be the racetrack, he's racing for position, and he did exactly what was asked of him. He even climbed up the curb to try and get out the way. Massa made the decision of trying to overtake him, and I think that was the wrong decision. I don't think Bourdais did anything wrong in my eyes whatsoever.
Well, whatever the professionalism of the teams and the talents and the courage of the drivers, it could well be the opinions of the stewards that ends up deciding this championship. So who exactly are the stewards? How exactly do they do their job? Louise Goodman has been trying to find out.
Sporting officials seldom have an easy ride. Referees, umpires, they all come in for criticism, and the Formula One equivalent, the FIA stewards, are no exception. They've been accused of making a few questionable decisions this season, like not giving Kimi Raikkonen a penalty for taking Suttel out of the race in Monaco, then docking Hamilton and Rosberg 10 grid places for this incident in Montreal. Questions were also raised when Ferrari were just given a fine for dangerously releasing Felipe Massa into the Valencia pit lane when GP2 driver Karen Chanduk had been slapped with a 10-second stop-go penalty for the same offence. Felipe Massa's collision with Sebastian Bourdais in the Japanese Grand Prix was another contentious episode. Most seasoned observers called it a racing incident, but the stewards saw it differently. In their opinion, Massa was ahead at the safety car line, and given the speed differential between the two cars, Bourdais should have known the Ferrari would be ahead at the corner and therefore taken appropriate action, even though the pair were racing. Do you feel there was any other action that you could have taken, anything else that you could have done?
Yeah, unroll the red carpet and say, here you go, the corner is yours. That's apparently what you need to do.
Bourdais was on the inside line. He put his car under the curbs. He cannot disappear. He cannot be air suddenly. I just think it wasn't his fault at all.
So who are the men making these decisions, and what are their credentials for the job? The three FIA stewards who preside over each race meeting are all senior officials in their National Motorsport Authority. Two are selected from the list of international stewards compiled by FIA boss Max Mosley at the start of each season. The third is a representative of and public affairs advice to the FIA. Donnelly does not vote on decisions. His role is to facilitate and coordinate the process. Incidents will always occur on the racetrack, but how can the regulatory process be improved? One solution that's been suggested is a permanent team of stewards officiating throughout the season.
If there would be all the time the same people, probably it would at least give them more even results all the time. It would be always the same penalty on same thing, and now it sometimes changes quite a bit.
We've tried all that. I mean, it's like a referee in a football match. They give a red card and everybody said they shouldn't. That's how it is. It's opinions.
Well, we all understand that, but presumably you don't change your opinion after seeing that explanation of the Bourdais decision.
No, I don't change it at all, and I think there should be an ex-driver or somebody who's got racing experience that can reflect into the conversation before they make a decision. Those guys don't have any experience sitting in a Formula One car. And the other thing for me, yes, consistency is a key word. They need to be consistent with these penalties being handed out. And if we're going to reflect on 11 guys or 22 guys, you know, with a football, I'm amazed by that, because we're dealing with one of the most technically advanced sports in the world, and it should be able to be governed in the same way.
What sort of effect is it having up and down the pit lane? Are drivers feeling nervous, inhibited?
The guys don't know what they can do and can't do. There's several things have gone on during this season, and when you look at what they do, if they make a move, is it going to stick? Do they make a move in the pit lane? Is there going to be something that goes on afterwards? Do they get the penalty? Do they get 10 slots back? It's a mismatch. They need to be able to go out there and race, and that's what we want to see. Guys at 200 miles an hour plus, wheel to wheel.
Well, as far as the leading contenders were concerned, the stewards didn't have a great deal of influence over qualifying yesterday, and James Allen can tell the full story of how the grid was formed.
Hamilton, Raikkonen, Massa, Alonso. We've got the same first two rows of the grid as we had at last year's Chinese Grand Prix, but the circumstances are quite different, and Hamilton will be hoping that the outcome is too.
Q1 was good. Q2 was okay. We I usually like to just do one lap, but everyone went out on the option, which was quicker. So I had to do that also, which was no problem. And then in the Q3, my first lap, it's very hard when you go out and first of all, you have no fuel and you have loads of fuel in the car, and it's a big difference. And I had a big wide moment, but I corrected it on the last lap, which was a really good lap for me. I was very happy with it.
I didn't have a good lap, that's clear, and but the balance was different compared to Q2. Q2 was so easy to make the lap, and Q3 was just impossible. So I think, you know, some things happens when we put fuel in the car, and the car changed a little bit.
There are two drivers standing in front of me in Drivers' Championship, with especially Lewis, with big gap, and if I would have opportunity to fight, I have to finish twice second at least. And lately we are not scoring such a good results with our pace.
So here's how they line up for this critical Grand Prix. On the front row, Lewis Hamilton, his second pole in a row with Kimi Räikkönen, who caused him so much trouble last time out in Fuji. Massa has never won a race when he didn't start on the front row of the grid. Alonso was stellar in qualifying. Kovalainen was just a few thousandths slower than Massa, but it puts him down in 5th, Vettel 6th. Then it's Jarno Trulli and Sebastian Bourdais on row 4. Through to row 5, Nick Heidfeld penalised 3 places for a block on David Coulthard and Nelson Piquet. Robert Kubica just outside the top 10. He's still a championship contender though, and Timo Glock is 12th. Rubens Barrichello completely outpacing his teammate Button. Rosberg's 14th. Then it's Coulthard and Webber, who dropped 10 places for an engine change. Nakajima had a poor day at the office in qualifying, so too did Jenson Button. They're on row 9. And Sutil and Fisichella bring up the rear.
Everyone came here talking about Ferrari's pace advantage, but there wasn't much evidence of it in qualifying yesterday.
It seemed to be a little bit down to where they felt they should have been. I think at some point they were actually sandbagging, and maybe when it got to crunch point, Lewis did a lap which put them in their place. But you know, at the end of all of this, I think the important element will be, Steve, who's going to drag down into turn 1, and we know that the Ferrari is probably the best starting Formula 1 car on the grid.
What did it tell you also about who might be carrying the fuel between Räikkönen and Massa?
Well, I think Räikkönen may be a little bit lighter, and maybe that's, you know, definitely a strategy has been put in place by Ferrari, and he's going to want to try and get in front and make things difficult for Lewis. And if the opportunity for Massa comes, he's going to try and go by, and I'm sure there'll be a situation where Massa gets by Räikkönen easily as well. So let's wait and see on that.
Well, yesterday was also one of those days where you thought qualifying should be worth a lot more than it actually is. Lewis Hamilton put himself under pressure, but then responded with a magnificent, aggressive, accurate lap to take pole position. And Martin Brundle has been taking a closer look at exactly how he did it.
The Shanghai International Circuit for the Chinese Grand Prix, just under 3.4 miles. It's a 56-lap race. Let's take a look at yesterday's pole position lap from
Canada and France, and it wasn't until his back-to-back wins in the British Grand Prix and in Germany that he got to the top of the table and stayed there. But his lead has never been more than 7 points, partly because of those rulings by the stewards, but mainly through self-inflicted damage.
At least try to match it if we can.
Hamilton's mistake in the pit lane here in practice was an unwelcome reminder of China 2007. McLaren's still nervous that this championship might get away from them like it did last year.
I've been nervy for the last 19 years. You know, you convince yourself that once the cars are on that formation lap, there's absolutely nothing you can do. So why be nervous? But the reality is I still am 19 years after first doing it. So you know, whoever's in the car, you feel that anything can happen at the first corner. That's the exciting thing about Formula 1.
I feel that tomorrow's going to be my job, getting over, obviously, the last race and putting that behind me and really putting together a solid race. Getting back on the top step would be a dream. Well, I've had a lot of these kind of experiences like Fuji, so it was, I'm sure, all the different bad races I've had are really trying to prepare me for that kind of day, and it was one of the hardest experiences for me to deal with. You know, when you start from pole position, you make a mistake and it ends up you finish in 12th. It's a horrible feeling, but I needed time alone, so I stayed in Sunday night. I had Monday to myself. Tuesday I flew here, and I recovered really, really well.
It meant, of course, back home a bit of a field day for the critics, and other drivers have been having a bit of a say as well. Any of that struck home at all?
No, I think if anything, that's added to me feeling so good, you know, because you can kind of you can kind of laugh it off and look at the situation as a positive, because if you look at all the past champions, they've all had a tough time at the front, people complaining, and it's just the way sport is, and it's the way people get when they're not winning. And all I can say is I'm not going to change as a person. I'm not going to change the way I drive, because this is what's got me here, and I just have to hope. I mean, I'm sorry that they all feel that way, but you know, I could just look forward and do my job and be. You know, my family love me, and that's all that matters.
You've been talking a lot this week about your own racing instinct and the way that you're a sort of a slave to that in race circumstances, and that comes first. What sort of role does psychological preparation for a race like this play for you, though?
It plays a huge part. I come here psychologically in a much different position than I was last year. I came here off a high last year after Fuji's win. And we were competitive all weekend. We qualified pole. I drove really well, and then we had a huge knock where we didn't finish the race. And it was so much pressure, because everyone said you can win the championship here and now, and people are saying that now, but I'm not focusing on this race as a championship winning race. I'm looking at this race as a race where I need to score points, and I go to Brazil. And China and Brazil are really the two races that I have to do very good to collectively get enough points to win the championship. And so it's a slightly different approach, and I'm for sure after the last race a lot more humble, I guess.
Perfect response is the pole position that you got today. It's the pole you wanted. It might not be the grid that you wanted with the two Ferraris surrounding you. How much of a challenge is tomorrow's start going to be?
Tomorrow will be tough for sure. I have no doubt that I'll have a good start, but Ferrari always have great starts, so I'm battling two Ferraris behind me, also Fernando's there. But I'm just looking forwards, and I try to have redeem myself with a good finish tomorrow. It would be great to finish on the podium.
That was Lewis talking last night. Two specific criticisms have been aimed at him the past week. Firstly, that in terms of decision-making and racecraft, he's far from the finished article.
Let's take on board where he's at. He's only in his second season of Formula One. He's a young guy, 23 years old. He's in a top team, a lot of pressure on his shoulders, and he's been leading the World Championship again in his second year. Yes, he's going to make some mistakes. They're going to be very public. And yes, we can all look back and say, why did he do it? And that can be done with anyone behind their wheel. I don't really lay too much blame on him at his doorstep with that.
And the other opinion that's been expressed up and down the pit lane, I'm not too sure how accurately it's been reported, but that in terms of his driving style, he's sometimes a danger to other drivers.
No, I don't go with that, Steve. I think, what we've got here is a very refreshing, aggressive racing driver. He makes moves, he puts opportunities in place, and then he takes them. And, a lot of guys out there, I think sometimes they forget where they're at. They forget that they're still in a Formula One car and it's capable of doing things. And, he makes those things happen, and he's a pleasure to watch.
And at the end of the day, he's leading the World Championship by 5 points, and he could take the title today. But he has got two rivals, of course. Robert Kubica, who maybe is more of a distant rival after his problems in qualifying yesterday. But Felipe Massa, in brilliant form for Ferrari, is the man who could really spoil things for Lewis. As Lewis Hamilton settles into his car, let's take a look at the other title challenges.
While Lewis Hamilton has lost points through 4 unforced errors, more often than not it's been Ferrari's mistakes that have cost Felipe Massa. He could easily have won the championship by now, had the engine not gone in Melbourne and Hungary, had the car been anywhere near drivable in the wet at Silverstone, and had a flawed pit stop traffic light system and a trigger-happy mechanic not cost him the victory in Singapore. Still, Felipe has 2 races in which to make up 5 points on Lewis. He at least title than have his teammate being champion in the garage next year.
Robert Kubica's the surprise candidate in the championship runoff. He eased his way into contention with a string of podiums at the start of the season. Victory in Canada, a first for Kubica and his BMW team, put the pole right up at the top of the table, 4 points clear of Hamilton and Massa. Kubica's form's been a bit erratic since then, but podiums in Monza and Fuji have kept him in the hunt. It'll be tough to overhaul a 12.
Has to go and collect those 10 points and try and make it out.
And if it does head to Brazil, Massa wouldn't want the margin to be any more than...
I want to try and make sure that things get finished off by the end of this race.
Well, Lewis has been showing absolutely no signs of tension during the course of this weekend. I'm not sure whether you can say the same about his McLaren team, as we heard from Martin Whitmarsh a short time ago. What extra now the tyre warmers come off, and dare we say that World Championship title beckons again, just as it did almost exactly 12 months ago. Lewis Hamilton on his way to pole position, will be out there on the grid with Martin Brundle as well very shortly. But is he also heading to the ultimate destination in his extraordinary journey through motorsport so far?
When I met Ron Dennis, I asked for his autograph. I asked for him to put his address down and his phone number. He wrote in the autograph book, phone me in 9 years and we'll sort something out then.
Give me one more chance and you'll be satisfied.
Lewis Hamilton, perfect 10.
Give me 2 more chances.
Lewis has hit the barriers. Lewis Hamilton is a Monaco winner. Brilliant. Hamilton is really on it.
He's never lost his confidence, and to a certain extent he's got as well. The World Championship is the prize, and it could be Hamilton's today. But one mistake now from any of the three.
General things, and you could just see he was, wasn't tightening up, but he was just getting very intense.
No, it's about minimising mistakes, it's about managing risk, it's about making intelligent decisions with very little information and very, very quickly.
When it really matters, like at the end, it becomes very difficult to make decisions. When you are under pressure and when you have to concentrate your abilities and all your energy on one thing, the true side of yourself comes out. That's normal for human beings.
In this year, and he deserved the championship. I think Felipe is a bit more relaxed because it's probably his first real crack at one, which you might think that he should feel more pressure. But I think that coming to these 2 races last year for Hamilton, obviously doesn't have great memories of these 2 races for himself.
Everybody would get more nervous than you would maybe at the beginning of the year, but he's shown over the past years that he can handle that without any problems. So I don't think that's an issue for him.
Talking specifically about Felipe, I think he's very eager to do it. Very, very, very. But it's a different pressure. It's the Italian press. It's the whole team. It's Montezemolo. It's the story of Ferrari.
Whoever wins it, whoever has the most points in the end deserves it. So it doesn't matter which way you get it, as long as you get it.
It's pressure for everybody, and this is when Formula One is absolutely at its best. Maybe the pressure is off for the likes of Nico Rosberg, but we tend to think that the pressure is just on Lewis Hamilton. But what about Felipe Massa and the feelings within Ferrari? How do you feel Massa is well equipped to cope with what lies ahead in the next 2 races?
I think he's got all of the equipment to get the job done. I really do, and I think he's had an outstanding season. But there's been a number of things that haven't gone his way, and you can say that about a number of drivers. But I think there's Ferrari, a lot of heritage there. They know how to win a world championship. I think Massa's been alongside Michael Schumacher in winning world championships. He's seen what it takes, and it's just a little bit of temperament there, just understanding whether the temperament's solid enough to get the job done.
And it's interesting also to reflect that he's never won a race from anywhere else but the front row, and he's on row 2 today.
Yeah, that's been something about Massa what's been evident over the seasons gone by. When he starts in pole position, starts in the front, he runs away with things. But when he's a little bit further down the grid, he has somewhat of a struggle to try and fight his way through. Whether that's going to be the case today, we're really going to have to wait and see. But I think nobody would be more focused than him to do it.
Sebastian Vettel there, who had that breakthrough win in Monza. Robert Kubica, who's back on 11th on the grid and with just a distant shot at this World Championship title. We'll have reflections from down there on the grid with Martin Brundle in just a few minutes' time. For that, a quick reminder of the website where you can register your opinions on all things Formula One. You can get all the news and check the details on the ITV F1 competitions, of which this is the latest.
This weekend's fantastic prize is a trip for two to Australia for the first race of the 2009 Formula One season on the 28th and 29th of March next year. You and a friend will be flown down under, have 4 nights accommodation in a 4-star hotel close to the track, and be gifted 3-day race weekend tickets to enjoy the Grand Prix at the famous Albert Park circuit. So to be in with a chance of winning, you can text F1 followed by your answer of A, B or C to 63337. Text also costs £1 plus 1 standard network rate message. Digital satellite and cable viewers can enter by pressing the red button now. You can also enter for free at itv.com until 5 p.m. Friday 24th of October. Entrants must be 18 or over. Phone lines close 5 p.m. this coming Tuesday, the 21st of October, and entries made after the closing time won't be counted but may still be charged.
So good luck with that. We await the presence of Martin Brundle down there on the grid. As all the other drivers are into their final preparations. Jarno Trulli, who will start on row 4 for Toyota. But what are his thoughts, Martin Brundle's thoughts in particular, on what lies ahead this afternoon? Let's go down to Martin, who's there on the grid.
Tense anticipation down here on the grid. Of course, Hamilton can secure the Drivers' World title today, and Ferrari can take the Constructors' title too, of course. Sort of a stadium effect down here with those aeroplane wings up the top there. That's the press office and VIP offices, and these magnificent grandstands. It does feel really exciting, really tense down there. Now down to the first corner is completely different to last weekend in Fuji. There it was a long run down to a very slow corner. Here it's a shorter run down to a high speed turn in to the first corner. And what we've seen in the other races, GP2, Formula BMW, is that those drivers that can hang on around the outside of 1 and 2 find themselves absolutely with the high ground for the turn into the third corner. So we might see a bit of that going on this afternoon. Now Lewis Hamilton, let's see if we can dive in and find a few of the drivers. None of them are on the grid at the moment, I'm hearing. I want to just talk to Norbert Hauke, who's the head of... Norbert, we're live on the British TV at the moment. So we're hearing that you've changed 2 wishbones, one on each car, rear wishbones of Kovalainen and Lewis Hamilton. Do we need to worry about that?
No, I don't think so. You know, this is just a check, and of course in such deciding races, such important races, you want to be very, very careful. But I think the team is really focused and doing a great job, and it was a shame that we suffered an engine failure for Heikki, first in 2 years. Should not happen, and we have to apologize to him because he was in a position to win. But I think everybody did a good job, and including Lewis, of course, who put the car in pole position.
Now, engines are quite interesting here because Lewis has a fresh engine today and the Ferraris don't. But critically, for the last Grand Prix in Brazil, Lewis is going to have a used engine. How important is that?
It's not too big a handicap. I mean, a fresh engine is better, but let's say 2 years ago, it was quite a difference of, let's say, 2-3 tenths per lap. But now our guys in HPE, high performance engines and Brixworth did a fantastic job, and I think it's not a handicap in the second race. You just need to use the engine as much as you should, and then it's okay.
Okay, thanks Norbert. Well, let's hope they don't have to compromise the use of Lewis's engine today. Now, I always think, I mean, Lewis is on pole. If you saw our track guide a little earlier on, you may have noticed that as they come out of the last corner, they stay on the right-hand side of the track. And that actually, for me, makes the left-hand side of the track, where pole position is, slightly the dirtier side of the track. And I always used to think that, see this white line and then the red line, immediately after Lewis leaves the grid, he's got to go across these. They're not going to have the same level of grip. So I think that can often be a disadvantage. Now, Raikkonen, Hamilton doesn't talk on the grid, nor does Kimi Raikkonen, but he starts 8 meters behind. That's the difference between first and second on the grid. And then, of course, another 8 meters all the way down. Let's see if we can dive in and talk to Felipe Massa, a man who's got a job to do today. I've got a feeling there's going to be an army of people around him. He's with Rob, he's not with Rob Smedley. No chance today. He's always keen, normally. But Felipe there then is obviously tense times today. He's got to get the job done. He knows that he needs to keep within distance of Lewis Hamilton. And of course, Hamilton's just got a posse of people behind him who don't want him to win the championship. Raikkonen alongside him, Massa directly behind him, and Alonso over here, who said, you know what, I'd like Kubica to win it, but if he's not going to win, I'd like Felipe Massa to win, and I'll do everything I can to help him. So if you're looking in your mirrors, you're Lewis Hamilton up the front there, you're going to see a Ferrari in the right-hand mirror. You're going to see another Ferrari directly behind you, a man who hates you directly just to the right of you. Let's see if we can find Kovalainen. Interestingly, not a single driver near their cars other than Massa standing over by the wall who doesn't want to talk to us. Let's talk to Pat Simmons here. Pat, what can Alonso do from that grid slot? You've won the last 2 races. What's your chances?
Well, we won it from 4th place last week, so I hope they're as good again. I mean, you know, we had a bit of luck last week, and I think there's going to be some shenanigans going on at the front anyway, so let's keep out of trouble, let's have a good race. Car's good enough.
Now, what do you tell Fernando Alonso before he heads off into a race like this, or do you just leave it to him?
No, we go through a lot of things, but, you know, with someone like Fernando, he's a good driver, he's got lots of experience, he's an intelligent guy. You don't have to tell him too much, but we do have checklists for everything.
OK, thanks for that. Well, there are no drivers coming back on the grid. They're all just staying out of the way. Louise has found Mark Webber down the back there.
Well, Mark, that engine penalty cost you dear yesterday. It's going to be tough after to do much from here, isn't it?
It is, yeah, Louise. I think, you know, with the strategies, it's so hard these days. If you're out of position in the first stint, then it's very, very hard. So obviously my fuel load is probably a little bit lighter than the people around me here because we tried to take part as best we could in Q3. And try and also know that we're going to get the penalty and be ahead of sort of the Force Indies and those guys, because it's very easy to qualify 9th or 10th and be just with them. So either way, 10-place penalty, 5 rows back is you're gone, basically. So it's going to be tough, yeah, and hopefully we can get something out of it at the end, but it's going to be a long race. The 2nd and 3rd stint for me will be long.
So we could see some pretty lively action, overtaking action from you in the early laps?
Well, I hope I can do a little bit, yeah. Still not it's not like Fuji. Fuji was a little bit easier, but I'll do my best.
Well, Mark Webber has had his engine problems this weekend. What about, Mark, what we were hearing from Martin Brundle for Lewis Hamilton? Sort of pressure to get the job done on a fresh engine this weekend.
Yeah, and I think they're just trying to make sure they've got everything that they can do to maximise his day. But, you know, the sequence of the engine is such that that's where he's left with an engine fresh today, and he has to take that into Brazil. But, you know, Lewis looks relaxed there, and that's a good positive sign.
His teammate Heikki Kovalainen qualifying 5th, and I think Louise has caught up with Heikki.
With Heikki, the birthday boy. Heikki, what would be the best present for you today?
What do you think? To win the race, of course, but you know, as a team, it's an important race for us. We're trying to maximize everything, take the maximum points. That's all we can do.
How do you think you're looking on race pace compared to the Ferraris?
I think we should be as competitive as them, but you know, we'll see. It depends on the traffic. It depends on many things, but we gotta be positive. Let's not worry about what might happen. Let's just worry the positive things and move on.
Enjoy the rest of your birthday. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Kovalainen can offer only distant protection to Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton on pole position, and then the 2 Ferraris of Raikkonen and that man Felipe Massa. From a driver's point of view, if 2 teammates are going to gang up on another driver, how exactly does it work?
Exactly how you just explained it. They're going to gang up on him, but that won't be the case as such. I mean, if they can get the situation where maybe he's in a Ferrari sandwich, they might try and just monitor the situation. But I think we're going to see something quite special when they lead into one. I'm sure Raikkonen's going to try and make something special on the outside. He won't be happy about the case of being pushed wide in the Japanese Grand Prix by Lewis, and Lewis is just hopefully going to be sensible, and whatever comes at him, he's going to have to cope with.
Kubica there, a distant 12 points off the championship lead and back on 11th on the grid after a lot of handling problems yesterday, which possibly will still be with him today.
Yeah, I don't think it would be too different, but saying that, you know, I think they were struggling somewhat during qualifying, which is a shame because both BMWs were quick in free practice in yesterday's morning sessions. But I think Kubica pretty much is out the title race now. I'd be very surprised to see him making any inroads into that. So we're really left with the big contenders of Ferrari and Massa and Hamilton and McLaren.
Nico Rosberg for Williams back on row 7. Lewis Hamilton on pole position, starting to get into a world of his own. Let's just give a quick mention to the other two British drivers in the field today. David Coulthard in his penultimate race, and Jenson Button with no end of problems.
Yeah, Jenson unfortunately struggling with the Honda. It's not really got great performance. I think there's a lot of focus on 2009, as there should be, but he would be a little bit happier further up the grid. DC, I mean, he's getting towards the end of his career, and you know, had a little bit of a battle during qualifying, which knocked him down with Nick Heifeld. But I think saying that, it may still be a little bit of a result out of DC. He's good during the race.
Adrian Sutil there, who once again shares the back row of the grid with his Force India teammate Fisichella. And let's get a Ferrari viewpoint. I think Ted is with Ferrari's Chris Dyer.
Yes, thank you, Steve. Chris, are you happy with the Ferrari's race pace?
Look, as good as we can tell, we weren't too bad on Friday, and we've improved the car a little bit since then, so as we saw in qualifying. So no, we should have a pretty good race pace today.
And is the team looking forward to this? I mean, the last race proved quite successful, worrying Lewis down into the first corner.
Yeah, it's going to be quite exciting. I think we'll all be holding our breath.
And what are you expecting strategy-wise? 2 stops the best way to go? 3 stops are possible?
I'd be surprised if anybody does a 3-stop.
Okay, Chris, thanks very much.
What about Lewis's own attitude off the start line? He really got the car bogged down in Japan, and was looking at problems with a slipping clutch, which I think they feel they've sorted out.
Yeah, I think they would have looked at all the data to understand what went wrong there, and saying that even though he got bogged down, he made amends by going underneath Raikkonen with that move into one in Japan. But I don't think he'll be taking those kind of risks today. I'm sure of that. But saying that, you never know what happens. It's a split-second decision from a driver, and when they make it, they've got to stick with it. You know, and I think that's exactly what happened with Lewis Hamilton in Japan.
But just emphasise once again what is required from Lewis down into that first corner, and also in that sort of hairpin loop that immediately follows it.
Well, he's got to just stand his ground, and hopefully he'll get off the line. As Martin Brundle said, there's 8 metres difference already between the first position of Lewis Hamilton and then Kimi Raikkonen, so he's got the advantage there, but it's whether he can make it stick. And we all know that Ferrari is fast starting. They seem to have something very special working. And if he does get on the outside, Raikkonen gets on the outside of Lewis Hamilton and stays his ground also for those first couple of turns, he will have the lead come the end of turn 3. Saying that, Lewis Hamilton is spectacularly behind the wheel, and there's some moves that we've seen in the past that no other drivers can do, and he may choose to take that option.
You expect Alonso to be amongst it at the first corner as well?
Undoubtedly. Alonso will be in there, and he'll be watching and hovering, and if a mistake's made and an opportunity presents itself, that man there will take it.
And if you were a race steward, what exactly would you be looking for?
I'd be looking to make sure that we've got a clean run down into one, but I'd also be looking at what the situation is of all those guys sitting in the cockpits and what's going on around them.
Well, the clock ticks on, as we said at the start of the programme. It's exactly 50 years to the day that Mike Hawthorn became the first British Formula One world champion, and he clinched the title in Casablanca. What can Lewis Hamilton do in Shanghai? The more important anniversary for Lewis is that it's a year on from the race when his bid to become the first rookie world champion really started to unravel, especially in that gravel trap at the entrance to the pit lane. Back here in Shanghai today, well, he can't rewrite history, but the world title battles again in the Grand Prix of China. The final countdown to the start to the Chinese Grand Prix when we return.